I've been married to Clara for 8 years, and I thought we shared everything. But last month, I found a photo in her childhood album that changed everything. The picture, taken when she was a teenager, showed her standing next to a girl who looked almost exactly like her, with the same wavy brown hair and narrow chin. When I asked about the girl, Clara simply explained that she was just a cousin, yet the way she quickly closed the album made me uneasy, though I tried to dismiss it. A week later at a family barbecue, I overheard Clara's uncle, who had clearly had too much to drink, ranting about how Clara's dad always had a soft spot for someone named Emily. Clara abruptly interrupted him, and later when I inquired about Emily, her face grew tight as she admitted that Emily was her half-sister, born from an affair her father had decades ago. She made it clear that she considered Emily dishonest, accusing her of taking advantage of their late father's guilt for money ever since she could ask. It was also obvious that when her father died last year, leaving Clara a sizable inheritance, Emily was conveniently left out of both the obituary and the will. I couldn't sleep that night. Even though Clara had never been cruel, the way she dismissed Emily felt calculated. The next day, while she was at work, I went through the files in her home office and, buried under old tax returns, discovered a crumpled letter addressed to Clara's father that was postmarked 5 years ago. The letter, written in shaky and desperate handwriting, explained that the doctors had said she needed treatment soon, that she couldn't work enough to cover the bills, and she apologized for asking again, all clearly signed by Emily. As I was reading the letter, Clara walked in, quickly snatched it from my hands, and tore it in half. She dismissed Emily's purported multiple sclerosis diagnosis as nothing more than a sham for sympathy, and I had never seen her so cold before. That night, I ended up sleeping on the couch. The following morning, I reached out to Clara's Aunt Margot, the only relative who had ever doubted the family's pristine reputation. She confirmed that Emily's mother had died when Emily was 12, leaving her in debt, and that Clara's family had even paid hush money to keep the affair quiet. However, after Clara's father died, they completely cut Emily off. According to Margot, Clara had always been protective of her father's image, and it seemed she believed that Emily's very existence tainted his legacy. When I confronted Clara about the matter, she accused me of betraying her, suggesting that I would trust strangers over my own wife. That word strangers kept echoing in my mind because Emily wasn't a stranger at all. She was a real person, suffering and alone. I managed to locate Emily's address through public records, which led me to a subsidized apartment complex on the outskirts of town. With the elevator broken, I had to take the stairs up to the 4th floor, my chest tight with anticipation. When she eventually opened the door, I immediately understood why Clara had kept me away from her. Although Emily had eyes that resembled Clara's, they looked tired and hollow. She permitted me to come in only reluctantly, her movements stiff, while the apartment reeked of antiseptic, mixed with the lingering odor of old takeout. Inside her apartment, she showed me a folder containing medical bills stamped as past due, along with pay stubs from her part-time job at a grocery store. In a matter-of-fact tone, she explained how Clara's family had contested her paternity in court, effectively blocking any chance for her to receive an inheritance. She mentioned that she had stopped asking them for help years ago because it was easier to simply disappear. I drove home trembling. When I arrived, I found Clara in the kitchen, chopping vegetables as if everything were perfectly normal. I showed her the bills, and she immediately froze, holding a knife as if it were an extension of her anger. It was then that I remembered the $15,000 withdrawal from our joint account the previous month. Clara had mumbled something about roof repairs, yet there were no receipts or records of any contractors. The following day, while Clara was out, I went through her desk once again in search of answers. Tucked away beneath a stack of invitations to charity galas she had never attended, I discovered a lawyer's letter. It revealed that her family was suing Emily to prevent her from contesting the will, and the letter was dated just 2 days after I had asked about that mysterious photo. I still can't decide what hurts more, the money, the lies, or knowing that every night Clara looked me in the eye while choosing to protect a dead man's reputation rather than help someone who was clearly falling apart. I can't stop thinking about Emily's apartment and the way she had apologized for its messiness, as though merely surviving was an inconvenience. Right now, Clara is staying at her mother's place. I received a voicemail from her accusing me of having broken trust beyond repair, yet all I can recall is the sound of Emily's voice saying that no one had ever fought for her before. Tomorrow I have an appointment with a lawyer, and I'm still not sure whether it will be about divorce, helping Emily, or both. All I know is that the photo revealed more than just Clara's face. It exposed a side of her that I no longer recognized, and I simply can't unsee it. Now for the first update. 2 weeks since I last posted, and I'm still waking up every morning expecting this to be a nightmare. But the coffee I drink is bitter, the texts from Clara's mom are real, and Emily's soft, apologetic voice is stuck in my head like a song I can't shake. I met Emily at a diner off the highway, that kind of place with sticky menus and waitresses who call you Han. She sat down with trembling hands and showed me a Ziploc bag filled with letters. She explained that these were letters her father had written back when she was in high school. The pages were yellowed and the ink had smudged, but Clara's dad's handwriting was unmistakable. One of the letters promised that he would always take care of her, no matter what Clara thought. It later turned out that he had even paid for Emily's community college until Clara found out and threatened to cut him off. I watched as Emily's fingers traced the dates, 2009, 2010, as if she were counting the years she'd been erased. That same afternoon, Clara's mom called me without any greeting, ordering me to stop meddling. Her tone was the kind she used at charity auctions, polite only because people were watching. She admitted that Emily had been her husband's mistake, using that word as if it were a stain she couldn't scrub out, and insisted that he regretted it every day. I wanted to shout that regret doesn't pay medical bills, but I just stood there, phone slick in my hand, staring at the $50 Venmo request Emily had sent me earlier for her medication. The forensic accountant ended up costing me $300 an hour, but it was worth every penny when he uncovered the $50 Clara had siphoned from our savings into her family's legal fund. I'd always managed our taxes, but she'd opened a separate account last fall, right after her dad's will went through probate. When I confronted her, she didn't even blink. She explained, as if she'd rehearsed it, that protecting her family's legacy was more important than any moral grandstanding. I asked if Emily was part of that legacy, and without answering, she stormed off, slamming the door so hard that our wedding photo fell off the wall. 3 days later, Emily sent me a text saying that the landlord had sold the building and that she had to be out by Friday. Apparently, Clara's family had bought the complex and doubled the rent. I later found Emily in her apartment, packing a duffel bag with her legs nearly giving out as she hoisted a box. She mentioned, matter-of-factly, that she could sleep in her car like it was normal. I told her that would not work. The guest room, once used as storage for Clara's designer purses, had to be transformed quickly, so I shoved the purses into trash bags and made up the bed with sheets that still smelled like bleach. When Clara came home, the smell of garlic and onions filled the air. Emily was cooking, her knuckles turning white around the knife as she chopped. I had never seen Clara's face twist in such fury. Without pausing, she ordered Emily to get out of the house. Emily dropped the knife, mumbled apologies to the floor, and then limped out. I later found her sitting on the curb, her arms wrapped around her knees. She remarked in a tired tone that she was used to leaving, though I really wanted to tell her she shouldn't have to be. That night, I told Clara that I would file for divorce if she didn't settle with Emily. Clara laughed, but her laugh sounded like glass breaking. She warned me that I'd lose everything, the house and my business, the very business I had built from scratch, which she never even cared to learn the name of. The next morning, my partner called to say that Clara's family had been telling clients that I was unstable, that I'd lost my mind, and one of our biggest accounts had paused their contract. I sat in my office with my head in my hands, wondering if Clara had ever truly loved me or if I was just another asset to manage. Emily checked into a motel, and she kept insisting that she was causing problems, almost as if her very existence was a burden. 2 days later, I found her collapsed behind a grocery store, her legs giving out mid-shift. An ER nurse explained that stress had spiked her MS symptoms. While I was filling out Emily's paperwork, Clara sent a text telling me to stop playing the hero because I was embarrassing myself. I ended up blocking her number. The hospital social worker connected us with a pro bono lawyer, sharp-eyed and quick with legal jargon like fraudulent conveyance and equitable relief. Later, Clara's cousin discreetly passed me an envelope at a gas station, murmuring that assets were being hidden while avoiding my eyes. The documents inside revealed that Clara's family had transferred stocks to offshore accounts to shrink the estate. When I handed them over to the lawyer, Emily hugged me, her whole body shaking, and admitted that no one had ever fought for her before. Truth be told, I was fighting for myself too, for the man I thought I had married, and for the life I believed was honest. The next day, Clara froze our joint accounts, leaving me unable to pay the electric bill or buy groceries. I ended up selling my '72 Fender Stratocaster, the one I had saved for throughout college, to cover Emily's $1,000 medical deductible. When I explained what I had to do, she burst into tears and promised she'd pay me back. But I just shook my head and insisted that family debts aren't managed by one person alone. Yesterday, Clara's mom showed up at my office, her pearls gleaming under the fluorescent lights. She suggested that I drop the case in return for making everything go away, almost as if she were offering a discount on a couch. I almost laughed when I told her that Emily wasn't going anywhere. She left without her latte, leaving the sweating cup on my desk. I'm writing this from the motel. Emily is asleep in the next bed, her breathing uneven but steady. The lawyer says we have a chance if the judge sees the hidden assets. Clara's divorce papers are demanding the house, alimony, even the dog. I don't care about any of that material stuff, but I keep thinking about that photo. The two girls who looked so alike, one cherished and one erased. Clara chose which sister to protect a long time ago, and now I'm making my own choice. Now for the second update. 3 weeks have passed since my last update, and I'm still not sure if I'm the hero or the fool in this mess. Maybe even a bit of both. All I know is that Emily moved into a new apartment paid for with backdated trust fund money, and I still feel the sting from Clara's mom's pearls, which left imprints on my palm when she gripped my hand in the hospital. Emily's lawyer described the evidence as a smoking gun, a secret trust fund her father had set up and hidden behind layers of shell companies. Although Clara's family had forged signatures in an attempt to dissolve it, the judge wasn't convinced by their excuses. When Emily broke the news, her voice cracked with cautious hope as she mentioned that the funds would cover her surgeries. I wanted nothing more than to hug her, but we were in a courthouse bathroom, and she was clinging to a paper towel as though it might drift away. The DNA test should have been straightforward. Even though Emily's birth certificate named Clara's dad, her family delayed the process for months. Their lawyer lobbed technicalities like chain of custody and lab accreditation at us, and every delay felt like a fist squeezing my ribs. At one point, Emily darkly joked about carrying her medical records on a fanny pack as proof of her existence, tapping the folder against her thigh for emphasis. On the day the judge ordered the test, Clara moved out. She took the antique clock from her grandfather, Buddy, our golden retriever, and the good silverware, leaving behind a hastily scrawled note on the fridge that demanded I choose between her and someone else. I couldn't tell if she had cried. I had never seen her shed tears, not even at her father's funeral. That same week, Emily's MS flared up badly. Sleeping on my couch, she even found herself losing strength mid-step. Her lawyer pushed for an emergency hearing, arguing that the trust fund could cover her treatments. The night before the hearing, Emily became sick from pain medication on an empty stomach, and I found myself holding her hair back, thinking this was what family was supposed to do. Later, I saw a photo on Clara's Instagram of her relaxing at a spa, tagged with something like self-care. My business took a serious hit. Revenue dropped nearly 40% after Clara's cousins told clients that I was unstable. I ended up letting go of 2 employees, Marta, who had just had a baby, and Javier, who had been with me since the beginning. When I handed them their severance checks, Javier told me I was doing the right thing, though his tone left me wondering if he really believed it. I never expected Clara's aunt to testify. Dressed in a faded floral dress instead of her usual Chanel suits, she admitted under oath that hush money had been paid to Emily's mom to keep her silent, insisting that Emily did not deserve any of the consequences. The judge sanctioned Clara's family for fraud, and as the gavel fell, I witnessed Emily silently thanking her aunt, who looked away. The trust fund eventually released $200,000, back payments that cleared all of Emily's medical debt. Emily later rented a studio apartment downtown on the first floor with wide doorways to accommodate her wheelchair. She sent me a photo of the empty space with a joyful exclamation about its pristine condition, and I brought her a hardy snake plant that she later named Steve. After the ruling, Clara cornered me outside the courthouse. Her perfume was overwhelming, almost as if she had bathed in it, and she accused me of ruining any chance of having a real family for someone who would never truly belong. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Until I recalled Buddy's empty bed in the garage. A couple of days later, someone had keyed the word liar into my car door. Security camera footage later showed Clara wearing sunglasses, scraping the paint off with her house key. The officer handling the report sighed at the mess domestic issues can be, while Clara dismissed the incident as a prank. However, a divorce judge later added it to her file, labeling the act as petty and even writing down the word vindictive. On a brighter note, Emily got a promotion at work as a shift supervisor at the grocery store. With her first paycheck, she treated me to coffee and even splurged on whipped cream. She joked about not being able to keep up with fixing registers fast enough, and for the first time in weeks, I saw a steadiness in her hands that spoke volumes. Meanwhile, Clara managed to drain all of our savings, $82,000 in total. According to my lawyer, it amounted to financial abuse, but by then the money had already been funneled into her family's offshore accounts. I was forced to live on credit cards, and just last Tuesday, the power was shut off. Emily graciously allowed me to crash on her floor, and over bowls of ramen. She joked that at least things weren't as bad as being in a motel. Things took another turn when Clara's mom suffered a stroke. When I visited her, I found machines beeping around her as she gripped my hand and in a raspy voice urged me to pass along her apologies to Emily before closing her eyes for the last time. Later, I received a voicemail from Clara, blaming me for what had happened, a message I saved for good measure. Her siblings later offered a deal where they would repay the $50,000 that Clara had taken if Emily dropped the lawsuit. But Emily refused, insisting that it wasn't about the money and that they needed to acknowledge the harm they had done to her father, the same man who had penned those letters and who, in his own timid way, had once shown love for her. My divorce hearing is scheduled for next month. Now, Clara is claiming that I abandoned her, but my lawyer has gathered screenshots showing that she drained our accounts, keyed my car, and sent accusatory texts. We are countering with charges of financial abuse. I've grown tired of the house, too. Every room just echoes with the sound of our fights. With Emily's trial on the horizon, I'm set to testify about the forged documents. She's terrified, practicing her testimony over and over, even with her cat as an audience, worried that nobody will believe her. I reassured her that the truth was on her side, even though I noticed her knee had been bouncing nonstop since breakfast. Some days, I drive past our old house, now missing Clara's Lexus and overgrown with neglect. I miss Buddy, and I miss the person Clara once pretended to be. But when Emily sends me a photo of Steve, the plant thriving, or when her lawyer confirms we've made progress, I know I'd choose this mess again. Not for justice or revenge, but because I've finally come to understand what it means to stick around. Now for the final update. 3 months have passed since I last posted, and honestly, I'm still untangling whether any of this was worth it. The dust hasn't so much settled as shifted, burying some wounds and exposing others. Here's where things stand. The court finally ruled in Emily's favor. Clara's family was ordered to pay her $200, back payments from the trust fund her father had set up, plus legal fees. When Emily called to tell me, her voice was steady, though I could sense an underlying tremor, as if she were afraid the ground might crack open and swallow her victory. She used part of the money to buy a wheelchair-accessible condo. At her housewarming, we planted her mom's old rose bushes in the garden. She said little as we worked the soil, simply pressing a hand to her chest as if to anchor herself in the moment. Clara's mom died the day after the verdict. The funeral was closed casket and for family only. Clara did not attend. Instead, she sent a text saying that Emily had, in her view, stressed her to death, a statement that felt both cruel and hollow, yet disturbingly familiar, in keeping with Clara's habitual way of assigning blame. The divorce finalized quickly after that. I kept my business and half the house equity. Clara had to return the $50 she'd siphoned from our savings, though it took a court order to make that happen. The day I received the papers, I sat in my car outside the lawyer's office, staring at the notary stamp. I thought I would feel relief, but instead, I only felt tired. Emily's new place is a 10-minute drive from my apartment. She has painted the walls sunflower yellow, and there's always a kettle whistling when I visit. Last week, she showed me a flyer for a nonprofit she's starting to help people tangled in inheritance battles. She invited me to join the board, half joking that my scars proved I knew what I was doing. I agreed, mostly because I had seen how her eyes lit up when she talked about helping others. It was the closest thing to justice she was ever going to get, and she was turning it into something good. Clara's siblings disowned her after discovering she had hidden money from them as well. The last I heard was that she was selling her dad's house to cover her legal debts. I ran into her at the bank last month. She appeared diminished, with softer edges and smudged mascara. When she saw me, she simply lifted her chin as if to ask if I was happy now. I replied that I wasn't, insisting that Emily being safe was all that really mattered. She left abruptly, even forgetting her deposit slip on the counter. My business bounced back slower than I had hoped. A few clients returned after learning about the smear campaign, awkwardly apologizing over coffee. I ended up rehiring Marta and Javier with raises. When Javier came back into the office carrying a box of pastries, he half-jokingly warned that he would regret the decision if things did not turn out well, though his grin made it clear he was in good spirits. Emily's health stabilized once she was able to afford consistent treatments. She sent Clara a letter offering mediation, but Clara ended up burning it. When Emily dropped off some paperwork, she noticed the ashes in the trash can and remarked in a half-understanding tone that at least Clara must have read the envelope, even though we both knew that wasn't really true. Then there was the voicemail. A month ago, my phone lit up with Clara's number, and all I heard was static, as if she had pocket-dialed me in the middle of a storm. I saved it not out of sentiment, but as a reminder that some things simply do not require a response. After that, I blocked her. Then came a strange twist. Emily was dating someone named Marcus, a physical therapist she had met during rehab. He would bring her tulips because roses reminded her of funerals. Emily explained that he was patient and never flinched when she had to cancel plans at the last minute. She remarked that not all families were like hers, and for once her words carried no trace of the usual bitterness. Clara's childhood home was sold at auction. Emily purchased it with part of her settlement and donated it to a shelter for single mothers. Last weekend we drove by the property. The porch swing was gone, though the oak tree at the front still bore the initials we had carved during quieter times. Emily squeezed my arm in a way that made it clear she believed that the change was for the better. The divorce isn't fully over. Clara is countersuing for emotional distress, though my lawyer says it's a Hail Mary. I keep a folder of screenshots, transfers, threats, and even a photo of my keyed car. Sometimes I wonder if Clara realizes how thoroughly she has documented her own undoing. What sticks with me, though, isn't the legal mess or the money, it's the small moments. Like finding Clara's necklace in a junk drawer, the one her dad had given her when she turned 16, and mailing it back with a note declaring that no debts remained and wishing her well. I also remember watching Emily's nonprofit help a teenager sue her dad for unpaid child support. The moment after the hearing when the girl hugged Emily and she paused for a second before giving in to the embrace while softly acknowledging that it was the reason she had survived is something I won't forget. I wasn't sure if I could call it a happy ending. Clara is somewhere out there, a storm contained within herself. My business is rebuilding, though the scars remain, and Emily still flinches at loud voices. However, last night, over takeout at her place, she gestured toward her thriving snake plant and remarked that it seemed destined to outlive all of us. We shared a laugh, and for a moment it was easy to believe her. It isn't exactly happy, but it's steady, and maybe that's enough.